table waiting for a friend to arrive, but didn't make a purchase. The scene caught on camera by other customers.
What did they get called for? Because there are two black guys sitting here meeting me?
Yes,
Well, what did they do? What did they do? Did someone tell me what they did?
They didn't do anything. I saw the entire thing.
They didn't.
What did they do?
Nothing. The woman says for...
The two men arrested and handcuffed. They weren't charged and eventually were released. Joining me now is Melissa DePino, an eyewitness. Melissa, thank you so much for joining us. You were in that Starbucks when these men were arrested?
I was in the Starbucks.
And tweeted out
Yep.
this video. So tell us what you saw leading
Yes.
up to this video.
Well, you know, I really just noticed something was happening when I saw two police officers come into the Starbucks and go over and talk to the men, and then a couple more officers came in, and then a couple more, and I think there were 6 or 8 of them. And sometime during that time, their friend, who you can see in the video, showed up. That's who they were meeting. And we were all just wondering, you know, why are all these policemen here? Why are they trying to make these men leave? They were just sitting there like everyone else. And, you know, we all sort of standing up and, you know, sort of talking to the people behind the counter and to the police officers and asking what was happening. And then they put them in handcuffs and took them out.
And they were, when the police arrived, I mean, how did the other customers react? Because they weren't, there was no yelling, nothing, right? They were pretty calm.
There was no yelling, there was no aggression. I mean, people, they were sitting there like anybody else would be sitting in a Starbucks at any time. And when the police officers were talking to them, there were no raised voices. I was sitting really close by, and you know, I couldn't hear exactly what they were saying because they were talking in a regular tone. So no, there was no disturbance.
So what did the other customers do? How'd they react?
Well, most of the other customers got up and started saying, what's, just like the man you see on the video, their friend, I mean, what's going on? Why are they asked to leave? You know, there was another woman who said, oh, I'm sitting here with my Gatorade and I've been here for 2 hours and nobody says anything to me. You know, I mentioned that I had been there in that store the day before, and I sat there for an hour. I didn't order anything. I was waiting for my son, and then I left.
You've been saying that this doesn't happen to white people. That's what you say.
Absolutely, absolutely. I can go wherever I want, do whatever I want. This would never happen to me. And you know, the thing that I've been saying is that, you know, I know that this happens every day to black and brown people in this country, and we just don't hear about it. We don't see it. I mean, it's out there, but people don't see it. They don't hear it. They don't believe it. And having this tweet go viral, over 10 million views, you know, I'm glad it's out there, and that however it got out there, I'm glad it's out there, and I'm glad it's sort of sparking conversation so that people who experience this can be the ones to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. And maybe something will happen unless it do more than talk, right? Some action to make a difference. Well, we hope that it makes a difference, and we thank you for joining us, Melissa.
Thanks so much, Don. I appreciate it.
So I'm going to bring in now CNN law enforcement analyst Charles Ramsey, a former Philadelphia commissioner, police commissioner, and CNN political contributor Michael Nutter, the former mayor of Philadelphia. Well, we've assembled the right people to talk about this. Good evening to both of you, gentlemen. You know, as a former mayor of Philadelphia, how do you feel about this incident happening in your city?
Well, first, Don, let me say now as a private citizen that I'd certainly like to apologize to these two gentlemen. What happened to them is certainly unacceptable. It's a horrible situation, poorly handled by the manager at Starbucks. I have no idea what was going on in that person's mind, but this is not the Philadelphia that I know and love and have served most of my adult life. We will not be defined by this kind of unacceptable incident and behavior. And the company will now deal with the two gentlemen. But I just wanted to say that as a private citizen, it is, you know, for me, you know, look, in office, out of office, I love this city, and for us to be, you know, national, international news for something so, you know, ignorant, it really does break my heart. And we have to be able to move forward from this. Because we are the city of brotherly love and sisterly affection, I believe we will. But we cannot ignore, as the previous person indicated, that these situations occur, whether in Philadelphia or anywhere else in the country, and cannot be glossed over. From what I can see and hear, Starbucks is not doing that. This may be the first time in history that the CEO of a major company came to a particular city literally to apologize to these two individuals. I don't think that happened in the United Airlines situation.
It's the last thing they need,
hats
Mayor.
off to Kevin Johnson.
Yeah, it's the last thing they need, and they certainly don't need a boycott. And Charles, Philadelphia Police Commissioner Richard Ross said that his officers did nothing wrong. He also said that he wished this hadn't happened. He says, this is a quote, "As an African-American male, I am very aware of implicit bias." Did the officers do the right thing in this incident, you think, Commissioner?
Well, I think the officers did the right thing because they responded to a 911 call that was placed by the manager of Starbucks. So I don't think the problem is with the officers. I think the problem is with the manager at Starbucks. Why did she call to begin with?
But don't the officers have discretion when they get to the scene if they ask you what you're doing and they can't really explain and they say, "I'm sitting here and I don't understand"? Don't they have the discretion, Commissioner, to not arrest these people for doing what most people do in a Starbucks, to go and grab some power at a plug, wait for a friend, use the bathroom, or use some Wi-Fi?
Well, the officers do have discretion. There's no question about that at all. But my understanding, and again, I wasn't there, but my understanding, having spoken with the commissioner after this occurred, is that the manager insisted that they be escorted out, that they weren't buying anything. That's against their policy. We've had problems before with Starbucks with a uniformed police sergeant in Philadelphia that was refused entry to the bathroom because they weren't buying coffee. And they were on duty working at the time, and this happened to be a white sergeant. So I think Starbucks has to really think about their policies. When is it appropriate to call the police? We're not private bodyguards or bouncers. I mean, if a person commits a crime, that's one thing. If they don't, then they should deal with it some other way. But my understanding is that the manager did want them not only escorted out, but was willing to sign complaints.
Yeah. Mayor, you want to weigh in on the officer discretion?
Just that, I mean, as you pointed out, Don, yes. Certainly there is some discretion that the officers can exercise, and as the commissioner said, it appears that slightly between a rock and a hard place. But I mean, I will say, every person who is stopped, if you run a light, yellow light, red light, or something like that, I mean, every person does not receive a ticket, but there's often some discussion or something like that. I just think that they ended up in a really bad situation, and sometimes whether it's a supervisor or different officers, possibly making a different judgment call in that regard. But again, back to the manager, if you call the police, I mean, something is going to happen. You call the fire department, you can't complain that your carpet got wet. Why did you call in the first place?
Right.
Why didn't you try to talk it out?
That's what the commissioner is saying.
With the gentleman. They said they're waiting for somebody, then wait and see if they're waiting for somebody.
That's what the commissioner is saying.
They were not disturbing the peace. They were not bothering anybody. They were not raising their voices. They're sitting at tables, and the place wasn't even that crowded. So, I mean, again, from what we hear from management, they're trying to deal with their policies, try to help their employees better understand how to deal with these situations. And as the commissioner said, when should you call the police?
Yeah, I want to get Charles Ramsey in. Just one more question before we run out of time here. The mayor's office of black male engagement said the best thing the men did was to cooperate and not get hostile. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with it. But from what I heard from your previous guest, the officers didn't raise their voice. The two gentlemen didn't raise their voices. They discussed it in a rational, reasonable way. And so that wasn't an issue at all. The issue was really, why were the police called to begin with? But they certainly handled themselves properly, because the thing could have escalated had they not done that.
Mayor, Commissioner, pleasure to have you both on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The sad truth is, what happened in that Starbucks could happen any place in this country. Millions of people of color could tell similar stories. One of them is CNN's Kamau Bell. I'm going to talk to him right after this.